Like your painting, Dale.
Thank you.
Nice band.
Susie did that.
Where'd it go?
Well, Susie didn't do that one.
Oh, okay. Wrong painting.
That looks like Montalcino, Tuscany somewhere.
Go.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Greeley Area Chamber of Commerce, we're so excited to have you for our second episode of Common Grounds, where a lot can happen over coffee. I'm Jamie Henning, and I'm the president of the Greeley Area Chamber of Commerce, proudly representing over 700 businesses in the Greeley area. This has been a really interesting time for our businesses as they pivot and work through COVID. But today our conversation is going to focus on much more than that. It will focus on the recovery and how our elected officials are stepping up and doing an amazing job. And we'll even talk about what we were working on before COVID and what we hope to get back to. So in the meanwhile, we'll continue to push customers your way, be good communicators, and provide business resources to all of you. If you haven't joined us before for Common Grounds, we're going to host these every other Tuesday. We'll go live actually from the Chamber's Facebook page at 8:30. And I'm joined by some tremendous community leaders on the call today. Some of those who have a regular platform on the show and a few of those who are new to the show. So welcome to all of you. It's great to have you on board. We really wanted to create a platform where we could keep Chamber of Commerce members and the community at Broad updated on the city we all love and get to know our leaders a little better. So this is going to be our forum. We're going to ask a few important questions and be able to visit with each other about how we can collaborate. Part of this was born out of our business response task force, where our leaders are getting together every single week to talk about what's important in our community and how we can see our way through to the recovery effort. But it's important to stay in touch, and this is something we do on a regular basis. So we're just bringing that closer to you. This morning, I'm going to welcome our mayor, John Gates. Hello, John. Good to have you on the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'd also like to welcome our City Council Chair and Mayor Pro Tem Dale Hall. Dale, we've got you on here as well.
Good morning. Good morning.
President of the University of Northern Colorado and our board member, Andy Feinstein. Andy?
Good morning,
Okay.
Jamie.
Hi,
Good
how
morning.
are you?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on. Representative for District 50 and Greeley, Mary Young. Mary, you're on.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And someone who is no stranger to Mary and our legislature, Sandra Solin with Capital Solutions, our lobbyist. Sandra, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So first, we're going to have our mayor give an update. Mayor John Gates was first elected in 2017, recently winning in a landslide. He's the person we all trust and look to in these times and always to give us comfort or the word we need or to give us some guidance. So John, thanks so much for being on the show. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to give us an update. So welcome.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning to my esteemed colleagues on the panel. It's great to be with you. For those watching, I hope that you benefit just a bit from our short conversation this morning. The news person told me today's day 43. Seems like about day 243, but nonetheless, it's been a long, wild ride for all of us. The biggest issue impacting the city right now is our budget, much like everybody else on the panel and all of our business owners that may be watching. I'm going to defer that to Councilor Hall in just a little bit to talk about. As you probably know, we have a really active, vibrant 24/7 incident command center. Those folks are on the front line of, most importantly, picking up and transporting COVID patients, tabulating correct numbers, monitoring sickness within our public safety crews. We've had up to 17 of our police and/or fire personnel quarantined. Right now, that number's down to 5, so we're making some progress. We have had a few that have been positive with the virus. So I'm happy to report that they are all recovered and back to work, doing really well. We have collaborated with Weld County on an isolation center that will open soon at Bonnell. And this is a center that will be designated for those that were COVID positive, not sick enough to be in the hospital, but they need some isolation. So we'll be providing them for a minimum of 2 months with a place to stay, food, a venue that will make them comfortable while they continue to recover from COVID. Two final things, and then I will move on. 2 weeks ago today, our city council pledged $250,000 to the Chambers Business Recovery Fund. Really a proud and happy moment for us in dealing with this because we had the ability to provide some money for grants to try to bridge the gap for our businesses, primarily small businesses in Greeley, to augment the federal funds, to try to bridge that gap between when they completely had to close down and when we're able to get them back open, recovering and making some money. And the public sector's really come forth on that as well, and there's quite a bit of money in that fund, and we're actively paying out grants. So that's fantastic news for our small businesses. And finally, this past Friday, Greeley City Council unanimously made a decision to go with the governor's Safer at Home plan with regard to our recovery from COVID, and it's pretty well delineated, laid out. And what we feel like at this time is we need a slow, measured approach to get our businesses back open. You know, I'm just like the next person. I'd prefer our businesses open at noon today, but that's not all that feasible. So we opted to go the route that our city council believes is the safest for the community. The county is large. There are probably a number of spots in the county that are not hot spots. Greeley continues to be a hot spot. We now have 88 deaths, and we're anxious to see that number of both positives and deaths come down. So this is the approach that we took. And with that, I will close and defer back to you, Ms. Henning. Again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mayor. I can't thank you enough for the public-private partnership and leadership you took in stance on the Greeley Area Recovery Fund. It's been an incredible project, and it's really getting to the heart of helping our businesses when they need it. So thank you for that, you and Dale both. So appreciate you. Our second guest today is Dale Hall. Dale serves on the Chamber's Board of Directors and is a longtime leader for Greeley. He is also our Mayor Pro Tem. So thanks for joining us, Dale. We'll look forward to your update next.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I guess it's a little early for my voice to get going here, but I have, in my past history, had some history with budgets. So that's kind of what I wanted to chat with you all about today. And part of it's going to be discussed later tonight with a work session with the City Council, where our staff is going to present to us and anyone that wants to listen in what the budget for the city appears to be. We'll do an update on what has happened thus far, and there are 3 strategies and 3 scenarios that are talking about those potential changes to our city budget. And right now we're looking at a 10% or 10%, 15% or 20% decline in revenues, and we'll be describing more in depth what those potential revenue changes might be. But hopefully we'll be able to get through the process. Right now, we've got approximately 18% of funds in a rainy day fund, so that we're still able to maintain without too much pain what our budget process is going to need, and go from there. I do know that there is, and I think if you've looked at some of the latest paper reports from the county, Don Warden described about the oil and gas revenues that come in, and things like that will come in on a lag rather than immediate revenue that you would get maybe from a sales tax or something like that. Those are property tax issues, and they may take a year to 2 years to actually show their effect on what the total budget will end up being. So this is going to be something that we have to work from looking out into the future and trying to maintain our best practices so that we can continue to make ends meet as we need to. I also, since I was in my previous life, I was a state representative for House District 48, and I was on the Joint Budget Committee. So budgets do have I guess, a place in my heart. But on Friday, I was talking with both the state OSPB director and then our CML, which is Colorado Municipal League directors and executive board, talked about some of the statewide issues. And we've currently got, apparently from the projections, we have up to potentially a $7 billion shortfall at the state level. And it's one of those things that, again, will have to continue on into the future, but we don't know exactly how that's going to be covered. What I'm hoping is that they don't decide to take it out of all our local funds and forget about the guys that are on the actual streets and trying to make sure that things function as they need to function. And then the concern with Colorado Municipal League is right now we have been asking the state to cooperate with the local governments with the federal acts, CARES Act, that talked about how the money that's coming from the feds is supposed to filter down into the local government budgets, because that was an easier concept for the federal government to consider how that money gets dispersed. But right now it's still sitting at the state level, and we're not seeing it on the local government side. So hopefully in the near future we'll be able to see some movement on that type of a situation. So that's I guess probably all the good news I got that I can think of. But we do have a concern with the budget, and I just want everyone to know that we are working very hard at trying to make sure that we do a good job with the taxpayer dollars that we are responsible for.
Yeah, we want to thank you for that, both you and the mayor. If you don't tune in regularly to those city council sessions, you should. There's a lot you can learn. I know I do. And, you talked a lot about things we're going to touch base about here in a bit. The economic forecast is incredibly important. The JBC plays a role in that. It's good we have our legislative liaisons on the call today, but lots of concerns at a local, state and federal level about funds and where they're going to come. And one of the most important things that does is fund our education system. So that's a good lean in for our next speaker, but thank you, Dale. Yeah, we'll talk more about that. Very important. And thanks for your leadership and the mayor's. Tough decisions to make right now, right? So our third guest today is President of the University of Northern Colorado, Andy Feinstein. He is on our board of directors, and this is also his first time on the show. In introducing him, I read a little bit on his website, and he signs off all of his posts, rowing, not drifting. I love that. That's leadership, friends. And so I wanted to go ahead and turn it over to Andy for an update this morning. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
You're on mute, Andy.
Thanks for catching that.
There he is. There we go.
Yeah, the Roaring Not Drifting motto is kind of unusual. It was a gift from the class of 1910 at UNC, and it's actually inscribed in the Horseman Gate on campus. And when I first arrived to UNC, someone pointed that out, and I took a look at that and said, that's something that I can really get a hold of. I mean, I feel so strongly on that theme of our purpose is really to move forward, and if we don't work together, then we do drift. And it's something that we have been discussing on my campus, particularly through visioning and planning for the last several months. I first want to say, Jamie, I so appreciate being on the show, and certainly being alongside our mayor, particularly Mary Young, our representative, and Dale Hall, because these are leaders that are really helping us get through these challenging times. And I just want to greatly, share how much I greatly appreciate their leadership and their support through all of this. So it's been a busy 2 months at UNC. Started certainly the activity really in early March, where we started talking about restricting travel and making changes in early February as well. We made the hard decision in March to go online right before spring break. And I'm so impressed by our faculty and staff, and basically taking a university's entire instructional modality and turning it to online in a week. If someone would have asked me if that was possible a year ago, I would say absolutely not, but pretty remarkable what we were able to do. We also moved out about 3,400 students out of our housing facilities, and we still have about 150, 200 left that look at UNC as their primary home of residence, but certainly that was a significant impact on the university. We've made the decision to close campus through July, and that means that there will be no summer camps for the foreseeable future on campus, no in-person online instruction, and only essential personnel right now that are still making sure that the campus stays open and operational. Like you heard also from Dale about the budget, what's happened with the coronavirus on our campus has been significant. We have estimated that just the financial losses this fourth quarter due to the coronavirus exceed $4 million, and we're planning for about an $18 million loss of revenue next year as well. So it has significant implications for the university, and we're working on ways to address that as a community. I had a 4-hour budget conference call with the campus last week in which we talked about things that we're going to be doing this summer into the fall to address what we certainly believe to be a significant financial impact. There has been some good news, and Dale also mentioned the CARES Act funding. For us, that third round of stimulus funding meant about $7 million, a little over $7 million to the university, half of which goes directly to students. And so we're actually working on a process by distributing those monies in the coming weeks to our students. And then half of it is actually being utilized to backfill some of our operational needs. But just as I said, the operational impact of about $4 million a spring is not going to be offset by a $3.5 million stimulus package from the government. So we're still looking for other, hopefully, a fourth round of stimulus funding. I'm not sure if that's coming yet, but we're obviously lobbying legislatively for that federally, and also working very closely with all of our representatives, senators in the state about state funding. 25% of our budget comes from the state, roughly $50 million. And I'm sure we're going to hear from Representative Young in a moment here, but the state's in tough times too. We're looking at between a $2.5 billion and $3 billion shortfall in tax revenue. And that's certainly going to impact the university with less tax revenue coming our way as well. So certainly concerned about that too. I'll stop there and let the next speaker also talk about the impact of coronavirus on their organization or on the city or state.
Yeah, appreciate your update. Also appreciate your silver lining you pointed out. I think a lot of us are finding new ways to do business and pivot in timelines we never expected possible. But thank you for your leadership. You're doing a great job. So thanks for being on the show as well. And we'll throw a couple of questions your way here in a bit. Our fourth guest today is Mary Young, State Representative for House District 50, Greeley Evans. She represents us well. She is one of our new legislators and is on influential committees as well at the legislature. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary. Thanks for joining us, and we're looking forward to hearing from you about what you're working on.
So thank you for the invitation. And I've got to say, working with and listening to the previous speakers, we're so fortunate to have such wonderful leadership in such chaotic times. The city and the university has certainly stepped up and been responsive to very difficult choices. And unfortunately, we're only just beginning. Jamie, you asked me to sort of introduce myself, and I came to Greeley in the early 80s. Sometimes I say that I was following the feedlots because I came from the south side of Chicago where the stockyards were. And I don't know if I was following the smell, but I arrived. I thought I was just going to have a brief stay. Speaking of the University of Northern Colorado, I came here to take classes and I thought I would move on, but I quickly fell in love with Greeley. I often say that it's Janine Trustwell's responsibility because I got involved with partners right away and just learned what a warm, inviting community it was. And after that, I fell in love with my husband. So here it is many decades later and still happily in Greeley. I first had a job with Weld County. I was a program director for a residential childcare facility, but quickly got back into my roots and worked with the mayor for many years. I was a special education teacher at the Castle, Greeley Central, for 9 years, and then became a school psychologist, school community facilitator in the district. And eventually got my doctorate from UNC in school psychology. I have worked in education my entire career. After I retired from District 6, I found out there were lots of opportunities in other places in Weld. So until I took this position, I was actively working as a school psychologist. I have a subspecialty in autism, which I was on the state autism task force for a while, and have worked in a variety of volunteer positions in the county. I was a partner. I'm still currently a CASA. I was the chair of the Child Abuse Coalition for a number of years. So I am just very happy to represent Greeley. And in the leadership we have now, you can see why I fell in love with the community. Now I'm going to have to slide into the very negative factors that we're facing as a state legislature and we are facing as lawmakers. Our top priority right now is to helping our state get through this crisis, but we have to face that Coloradans have lost their jobs and we're facing a very difficult recovery. I'm very glad that we are starting the next step of opening up our businesses. And I'm so glad that the city is supporting very cautious movement into opening because I think we have to respond to what our medical leaders are saying, that they really do need us to be thoughtful because we don't want to go into another spike. I'm on the Public Health Committee and Public Health and Human Services. So obviously this is an issue that we're looking at very intensely. Overall, this is what we're focused on right now, is making sure that we are prepared. But Dale's reference the challenge we're facing, which is we will have another economic forecast on May 12th. Right now, realistically, I'm hearing smaller numbers than Dale heard, but I would not be surprised if they escalated. What I'm hearing is $2 to $3.5 billion shortfall. And this is going to have an impact on the core functions that we fund in the state as K-12 education, higher education. Prior to the pandemic, I have been working with Dr. Feinstein and Dr. Pilch in my commitment to funding as much as we possibly could for these core functions. And we were looking at increases in both areas, though they were still modest and probably not as much as we would like. But with these shortfalls, it is really going to be a challenge. And what I would encourage, Dale referenced the money that has come from the CARES Act. It's my understanding it has not been distributed at all, because we're trying to receive clarification on how it's supposed to be distributed. But really, we all need to work with our federal delegation to encourage them in this next tranche of funding to fund states and local governments. Because the reality is, with such a shortfall, there will be a trickle-down effect from what the state has typically funded in the past. So it's important for us all to work together to encourage that funding so we can all benefit from that.
Well, I want to thank you for your work on education and your passion for it. I also want to thank you for your collaborative spirit. We talked, what was it now, a week and a half ago, and just your willingness to collaborate with us you know, it's tough as legislators. You put forward bills that you're proud of and that you feel touch those points that will help us on the whole. There will be a lot of hard decisions as we move into that economic forecast, but all of you, I know, want us to be proactive in seeking you out to find solutions, right? That's what we're trying to do. So thank you for your collaborative spirit on all of that, and you represent Greeley well. So I'm proud to have you. Yeah. Also, our final guest is Sandra Solin of Capital Solutions. Sandra and Mary are not strangers. They work together regularly. Sandra represents us well in our Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance, and I'll just take a moment to educate you on what we work on there. So we work as partners with Fort Collins and Loveland to represent the Northern Colorado region and area on issues that are important to business. And Sandra is the front of that effort. So thank you so much for being on, Sandra. I know it's your first time on the show too, and we want to hear a little bit about what you've been working on behalf of Greeley and our surrounding partners. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. It's always nice to see you. I appreciate the invitation. And as I mentioned earlier, it's great to see our elected leaders and Andy, who, just the wonderful leaders of the community who, as Mary pointed out, are really delivering and helping us through this crazy time. And of course that it is. And about 6 weeks ago, the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance had been actively working on a host of legislative measures, both in defense and in offense, proactively seeking opportunities for funding transportation, which is something we've been working on for a long time, but also at the same time, defending the business community related to a host of measures that we're going to, in our view, increase cost to business and perhaps put some additional burdens on them. The world shifted dramatically, of course, 6 weeks ago when the legislature suspended its session and leaving about 350 different measures on the table. And the organization, on behalf of the chambers, shifted to proactive efforts to elevate the conversation around business impact of the COVID response and what can be done. And in that spirit, and much of the discussion was shifted to Congress and what's possible and what sort of relief measures could happen there. We engaged with our senators and had our board of directors, along with the chamber boards, engaged in discussions with Senator Gardner, literally the morning of the passage of the first CARES Act and the PPP, to get an up-to-the-minute download of what was coming, what opportunities existed for business to access funds to help them recover from this, at least some initial funds. And that provided a great resource for the chambers to then share that information out. And then about a week later, we visited with Senator Bennett, and the timing of that was really critical too, because then it became this, okay, what's next? What more can be done to help business through this difficult time? And what are the different elements that, of the CARES Act that may not be working, that we were able to then share some of that feedback with Senator Bennett, which has subsequently resulted in a joint letter from Senator Bennett and Senator Gardner to their leadership on an overview of the challenges that businesses have incurred as a consequence of CARES Act. And of course, they've had multiple conversations across the state, but with organizations like ours, but it was really important that we be a part of that conversation. And so we're grateful to have had that. Now we've begun to, now that a lot of that has been taken care of, and certainly there will be more discussions once Congress comes back on May 4th. But we're likewise, as the conversation earlier was alluding to, focused upon the state and what difficult decisions that will be coming forward by our elected leaders locally and at the state level. And the economic forecast certainly presents a remarkable challenge to how we recover. And ironically, of course, much of that forecast is based upon the revenue potential revenue losses that we may be incurring from the oil and gas industry as a result of COVID and the oil price war, and further highlights just how important the energy industry is to Colorado's economy, the entirety, not just Weld County, not just Greeley, but the entirety of Colorado and the linkage between the two. And so as they struggle, we've obviously doing our part to see as a region, as a community, to see what we can do for the energy industry in this difficult time as well. And along with our conversations with our elected leaders, we've engaged with Betsy Markey at OEdit, Office of Economic Development and International Trade, about opportunities for economic recovery at the state level, in dovetailing with the governor's Economic Recovery Advisory Council that he appointed early on, which was one of the more forward-looking efforts, I believe, that the governor has had. And I have to commend the governor on his response. I think he's done a really good job. But the Economic Recovery Council, chaired by Federico Pena, I think will be a really important provide important leadership to providing opportunities and different concepts moving forward. We approached OEdit and the Economic Advisory Council around the challenge of property tax and the fact that so many businesses are facing their payments due this month, at the end of the month. And from a cash flow perspective, is there an opportunity for a postponement, delay, waiver of fees, and so forth? And so we've engaged with them. We've been working with Weld County. Weld County was at the forefront of some of those discussions, and we've unearthed some challenges with doing some of that work, but we're actively looking for solutions and creative ways in which to provide additional relief for businesses around property tax. And generally just continuing to look for opportunities to alleviate the existing pressure upon businesses so that we can see ourselves healthily through this really difficult challenge. So I'll stop there, Jamie, and again, thrilled to be with you this morning, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know many people on the call actually attended the first Greeley Day at the Capitol, and we provided a position paper on many of the business issues and where we stand. I know that is close to the vest in terms of a priority for us as we move through these tough economic times. So I think that's the first piece I want to pitch out to all of you. And Sandra, we can start with you. You've outlaid some of this, but as we move through these tighter pinches around the economy, we all see the forecasts. We know they're going to be tough on all levels. What are the things that you want to see us prioritize? And I'll maybe frame this out as well. There was a lot we were working on before COVID arrived on our doorstep, right? Those major priorities we wanted to see forward. So how will we keep our eye on that ball? And what are those priorities for you that you were working on before COVID and you'll see as a priority after, that we can keep kind of in focus? So I'll start with you, and then I'd like to open that up to everyone on the call.
Yeah, so we were working on a lot of different things prior to the suspension of the session, and we were fortunate to be joined by as an NCLA board and boards across the state. We joined our Northern Colorado legislative delegation just last week to talk through the upcoming session, which will hopefully come on May 18th. And I think three things were of critical importance to us. The first being do no harm. We were actively working in opposition to a number of measures that had been introduced that were particularly problematic for business, imposing additional requirements and burdens upon us, both at the worker, employer, employee relationship side, also additional regulations. And so we were actively working in that regard. And so our message right now is really do no harm. We know that as the legislature comes back, the message from leadership to their legislators has been, we're moving forward bills that are fast, friendly, and free. So things that have limited opposition are certainly have no fiscal impact and can move through. And we would certainly concur and send a message of just do no harm. Business is contending with a lot right now, and there's a time and place for some of those discussions at a later date. The other piece, and related, is the family bill. We have the Family and Medical Leave Act. It was one of those measures that was particularly concerning to us in terms of the impact and burden upon business, recognizing, of course, that the needs that employees have to ensure that they can provide for their families in times of need. And certainly this situation has further highlighted that. But again, we believe that now is not the time to have that conversation. We've been actively engaged in those discussions, appreciate the needs and the desires there, but we'd prefer to see that pushback. And then the last piece was the property tax piece that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, great recap of the things we see as priority, definitely from a business lane. So yeah, appreciate that very much. Anybody else on the call want to visit a little bit about your priorities pre-COVID, post-COVID, and things you'll keep your eye on as we move through this?
On the advocacy piece, I can add, we started the year last fall with the legislative preview, and Representative Young was there, and we had other folks talking about, what the session would look like. And we held a Greeley day, and many of us from Greeley community went down to the Capitol and talked about what's important to our community. And then on the higher education front, we saw the original governor's proposal for funding for higher education was about 2.5%. And the higher education CEOs across the state and public higher education got together and really worked on advocacy and discussing supporting funding increases for higher education. And we were successful at that up until the coronavirus hit. We were actually looking for about a 7% increase in higher education funding. And after talking with a number of joint budget committee members and meeting with them and discussing the impact of higher education in Colorado and our future, they clearly were supportive of that, and actually worked as a community, higher education community, and actually revising the way in which those resources were distributed to universities. So once the coronavirus hit, certainly we understand that the tax revenues are down significantly in the state, and we're not expecting a 7% increase in funding. But what I am impressed with the Joint Budget Committee, and I believe they start meeting early in May to talk about finalizing the budget, is that they still know and care about higher education. And as Representative Young said, I mean, they're thinking about ways in which they can still support us in some way, certainly realizing the devastating economic impact of this virus on the state.
As go the schools, so go the community, right? And vice versa. So yeah, incredibly important priority for us before and will be after, no question.
I'd like to talk about sort of pre and post COVID. I'd like to commend Dr. Feinstein, because I sat in on those JBC meetings and part of the discussion prior to that, and he provided so much effective leadership to developing that presentation on the part of the higher education leaders across the state. His fingerprints were all over it, and I've got to say it was one of the most effective presentations I had ever heard. I'm glad that Sandra mentioned fast, friendly, and free, because that is definitely the mantra that we're hearing that we will face with post-COVID legislation. And I know that people are hearing the concerns about the things do no harm and that Sandra is mentioning. And as Sandra knows, there's a great deal of tension when you're looking at cash flow around personal property taxes and still being able to fund K through 12 education. And I know the state has a commitment to be responsive in a way that will address both the business community's needs and K through 12 education. We are going back May 18th, and I would appreciate any kind of input that you have for me. I had a bill that Commissioner Kirkmeyer brought to me, and we don't know which of our bills will survive. It was a bill to keep money in the county where a child is either placed through dependency or neglect or the juvenile justice system to keep the money in the county in the case manager in the county where the youth was identified. I was able to bring that fiscal note down to 0 prior to COVID, so I'm hoping it will survive. Not so sure about many of my other bills. I do have a bill to provide crisis training to mental health providers to deal with youth and adults who face developmental disabilities, autism, and other intellectual disabilities. I'm hoping that that will survive because certainly in this time of COVID, we've seen the escalating mental health needs in our community and across the state.
Yeah, thank you for your passion and work on that, certainly Representative Young. I'm going to shift a small bit. I know John's got his, the mayor has his mute on, but I'll ask him to take it off for a minute. I heard some wise words from him yesterday on a call, kind of advising business, and maybe you want to address what Andy and Mary have also been talking about first, but advising business on how to lean in to this moment where we're transitioning, right? We're trying to decide what to do next, and I thought you had some wise words on that. And anything else you want to comment on here, I'll turn it over to you again, Mayor.
Thank you, Jamie. Well, pre-COVID versus COVID was just such a drastic move for the city. Our economy was in fantastic shape. Our sales tax, lodging tax was really high. Economy really could not have been better. We still do have a really healthy rainy day fund, which of course we'll be using. It's the reason we have these types of things. But I've been certainly concerned right from the start about the businesses, restaurants that had to either close down or restaurants go to carry out. A number of restaurateurs told me that they started out with about maybe 30% of their prior business with carry out, and that's dwindled down. I don't know if it's because just there's so many offering carry out, which I'm so glad there are, or if people have just worn out a little bit with carry out, but some of them are telling me that's down to 10, 15%. And obviously simple math would suggest that you can't sustain your business at 10 or 15%. But the payroll paycheck protection plan and the CARES Act provided some money to many of them. And as previously mentioned, the business response fund in Greeley is it's our goal to bridge the gap and try to get those folks, try to keep their doors open, their employees either on or back on if they've been furloughed, keep the rent paid, because I believe I've got to be a cheerleader of Greeley, right? And I am one, and I believe that our economy here in Greeley will recover quite well once we get to that point. But we have to do what we can to help our businesses and to keep them strong. And then the part that the business recovery plan can't really help is myself and city council are cognizant of the thousands of people who have lost their jobs. As a result of that, they can't pay their rent or they can't pay their mortgage. It's my hope that renters and banks are being willing to work some of that out and defer some of those payments. I know in some cases I'm told they are, and in some cases they aren't. But the key to recovery there is to get those individuals back to work. And it was not necessarily a popular decision by city council to adopt safer at home, but we want to be safe. They talk about plateaus and they talk about decline of statistics, and we're not there. I hope we're getting there, but I think that the tough decisions that any elected officials have to make now, they're kind of tough anyway, but the decisions that all of us are having to make now are just a little bit tougher, and they're very, very emotional. I've closed every social media post I've made with, stay strong, stay calm, and let's try to be nice to one another. And in a lot of cases, we're pretty vile right now, and emotions are really high. And I completely understand that people's lives have been turned upside down. And I think it's our job as elected officials to try to remain calm and try to lead them through this. And I've said that we will come through this. It's cliche, stronger than ever, and I believe that. But we have to get to that day, and of course, none of us have any idea when that day is. So we'll keep plugging along. We want to help in any way we can that's in our purview, and we want to assist everybody in getting things back at least kicked in at a slow process and then build up to a crescendo, I hope. So we're hopeful. City leaders are calm. I don't think we can expect our residents to be calm if we're not calm. So that's the approach that we've decided to take. And I'm working with a really solid foundational city council, and that's been really helpful. And I appreciate each and every one of them.
Yeah, the business-friendly nature of everyone we work with in Greeley is so incredibly helpful, and the heart everyone has for business. I read those emails too late at night, right? They make it a little tough to sleep from business owners who put everything on the line. So my advice from one of those small business owners, and I'm actually going to pitch it back to Sandra because she helped us send a letter over to the governor about the fact that we won't all be immediately back, right? This is going to be a transition for those businesses. So we created a Greeley to Go website that helps you see the latest on what those businesses are trying to transition and do. And Sandra, I might pass it back to you for the business owner we talked to earlier this week, and you advanced their letter about how they kind of see the time in the transition and wanted our advocacy. And I know you had one other thing to mention, so I'll just pitch it back to you for a moment.
Yeah, no, every business is obviously having unique experiences, and our restaurant community, as you pointed out, John, is really struggling right now. And one of the early measures that was taken under the executive order, actually, an executive order related to the restaurants and the ability of restaurants to provide cocktails to go. Wine and beverage is a huge portion of restaurants' revenues. And so before the first executive order around that came out, actually NCLA was active and joining forces with the Colorado Restaurant Association to ask for that. We got a message from one of our restaurants and distilleries in town asking for a continuation of that, even under the Safer at Home. And as things transition, until such time as they're fully operational, the opportunity to continue that program, Cocktails to Go. And so we coordinated that letter, moved that letter along to the governor's office, and in coordination with the Colorado Restaurant Association to ensure that they understand that that is still a need for our community, our restaurant community, and bar community as well. So I just wanted to mention, another place where we're seeing opportunity, because we have to begin to look towards the recovery side of this. And again, Northern Colorado is so uniquely affected by this because of the compounding effect of the energy industry and the oil prices alongside the COVID stuff. And so beginning to really think through where are the opportunities in the future. We've been engaged with our congressional members around infrastructure reinvestment as well on transportation. Transportation is a place NCLA has been working for a number of years and had been on the cusp actually of introducing legislation during the session just before the suspension of the session, but shifted to how can we further entice more job creation in the area. We know transportation and infrastructure investment has long been a stimulus that we've seen in years past on previous downturns in the economy. And so we've been actively encouraging that perhaps as a means to find employment for some of the displaced energy workers in the meantime until that industry comes back in full force, which I fully expect it will. But we have some temporary needs that are important. So that's another place I had just wanted to make mention of our continued efforts there.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I'm actually going to wrap by turning it back to Dale. Dale, I think you had a final thought before I wrap today. Are you still on, Dale?
Yes, I am here. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So yesterday I was on a Zoom call, which I'm understanding now what Zoom fatigue is. And I know the mayor was on the same call with me, and he has to have Zoom fatigue because he's on almost all day long. But we were talking with our economic development staff member, Ben Snow, and I asked him a direct question as to what our future development prospects are doing now in light of what COVID is doing. And he said that so far, everyone is still continuing to move forward, both on the business side, where we're adding a few more manufacturing companies that are going to try and come to Greeley, And then on the residential building side, people are still working toward bringing in some new business to Greeley. So hopefully we can get through this little hump of undecision, or we don't know what's going to happen, but the future will turn out to be bright and helpful.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I had a call last week from an economic developer that I used to work with, and he said, I continue to see from site selectors around the country, Greeley make top 10 lists, top 20 lists in terms of places that people want to build their business and see the growth curve and see all the positive economic indicators. So yeah, we will not lose sight of the good news that Greeley is an amazing place to be.
Jamie?
So, thanks for your reminder there too. I
Jamie?
want to thank, yes.
I just want to add one thing to, if I can just go back to something, I just want to applaud the mayor and the city for endorsing the Safer at Home guidance from the governor's office. I know those are difficult decisions to make, and they certainly impact our business community and our city. But I think, most importantly is we want people to be healthy and safe. And so I want to applaud the leadership that it took to make that decision and to endorse that. I think that was very important. And the second thing that you have mentioned, and also the mayor, is about the Greeley Area Recovery Fund and the work that the city has done in contributing to that fund, as well as a number of citizens across our community have. And I just urge those that are watching the show to consider making a contribution to the Greeley Area Recovery Fund to support our businesses moving forward. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. It's incredibly important as we move forward. We continue to find businesses to apply who need our help, and then also for the community to donate around that effort. We appreciate that. Leaders don't always get to make easy decisions, right? You just leaned into that. What's most important is that we make the right decision. So I'm grateful to everyone on this call that I get to work with every day. You're a tremendous group of leaders, and I'm actually going to close with the other thing I read on Andy's website I loved yesterday. Tough times do not last, but tough people do. There's a lot of tough people on this call, and I'm so proud to serve with you here in Greeley and to get to work with all of you. You're an amazing group of leaders. I want to thank all of our special guests for your first time on the show or your regular seat on the show. Continue to keep updated on resources we're providing to businesses and to contact us if we can help and collaborate. You can go to our website. You can contact me directly. My information is out there. I'd love to work with you. Our goal is to help stay in touch as we move through the challenges we're facing and also the opportunities. And I hope to see you soon where we can find some common ground. Be safe and take care of each other. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.